Hello everyone, I'm Mr. Shadrach Swiller, your teacher. Welcome to a 40 minutes class for Form 3, and today we are starting our topics in this class, Form 3. Congratulations to those who got superb results for Form 2 exam. Welcome to Form 3. In Form 3, my dear students, we are going to check for topics, and those topics are establishment of colonialism, how Europeans established the colonialism in Africa, colonial administrative systems, the structure of political system during colonialism in the colonies, colonial economy, the activities or economic activities established by Europeans in the colony. And the last is colonial social services, the services that are provided by colonial government in their colonies. One thing I want to share with you before going to the first topic, that is establishment of colonialism, is the structure of our syllabus from Form 1 to Form 4 divided into 3 categories. These categories is history of Africa before colonialism, pre-colonial, and you learned that in Form 1 and Form 2. Form 1 and Form 2 trying to explain how Africa it was developed, how life of Africa it was before establishment of colonialism. And in Form 3 up to Form 4, the first topic, you are going to learn colonial history of Africa, colonial era of Africa. And in Form 4, the 3 topics later, you will check post-colonial Africa, after nationalism, then changes in political, social, and economic policies, African international affairs. Those were the topics going to be discussed as post-colonial Africa. So, generally we can say the history of Africa, or the history of this continent, can be traced from pre-colonial, and you discuss the Form 1, Form 2, colonial, you're going to discuss Form 3 and somehow Form 4, and the post-colonial Africa. And here in Form 3, you are going to check colonial Africa. That's why there is one element available in every topic: colonial, 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 colonial. Establishment of colonialism, colonial administration, colonial economy, colonial services. All those are about colonialism. You are welcome, dear students, for the Form 3. The first topic, as we checked here before, it is establishment of colonialism. What are the subtopics of this topic? Number 1 is Scramble for the partition of Africa. You need to check on this case. Number 2 is going to be Berlin Conference. Number 3 is establishment of colonial control. And the last is going to be African reactions to colonial rule. These are subtopics of the establishment of colonialism. Why am I giving to you? It is necessary whenever you are, if you come more close to this kind of information, know that you're supposed to dig deep to understand these informations are among of the important things you need to have for your 4-year course Form 4. And without wasting time, the concept number 1 I'm going to check here is stages of colonization. Before having full control of Africa, Europeans applied 3 stages to take the continent called Africa. The first stage, it was penetration of agent of colonialism, and this agent of colonialism we discussed better with your teacher there in Form 2, industrial capitalism, the last topic. After penetration of agent of colonialism, the second, it was intensive scramble for the partition of Africa, and this is going to be our main topic of today. And after intensive scramble and the partition of Africa, the last stage, it was the establishment of colonial rule. Scramble for and the partition of Africa. here we have two words, the word scramble and the word partition. Scramble, this is a situation whereby we have few resources, or we have the resources, but there are so many people demanding that resource. That is scramble. Example, those are my students who are studying boarding schools. You can remember one time of while you are receiving your meal, there is a time you are scrambling to get food. We have one dish, and there are so many hands going to that one dish in order to get maybe a piece of meat or to get something delicious. That scenario is called the scramble for. So in that way, if you are at school environment, we can say you are scrambling for food, or sometime you are scrambling for the water, or sometime you are scrambling for the sports accessories. That is scramble. But how is connected to Africa? In Africa, also the same. There were so many hands wanted Africa, but in Africa, those hands are going to call them European nations. European nations, they came after good news sent by those agents of colonialism. They rushed to fight for Africa, and especially in those potential areas. And after that fighting created sparks, created indicators of war for that scrambling. So to avoid that war, they said let's go to the dividing that was Berlin Conference. So generally, the scramble of the European power of Africa was the process of fighting for colonies in Africa, which took place in the second half of the 19th century. And this illustration here, it's trying to show the scramble, how it's happening. We can check those hands in name of European countries. All of them, they opened the eyes for Africa. Italy, Germany, Portugal, Spain, France, Belgium, Britain. All of them, they wanted to take part of Africa. And that was scramble. So to avoid that correlation, Belgium want Congo, Portugal want Congo, France want Congo. How we going to handle the situation is nice to have Berlin Conference. So Berlin Conference, it was a product of intensive scramble happened in Africa. Why this nation scrambled for Africa? That's a very big question, an important one. Why this European nation scrambled for Africa? European nations scrambled for Africa because of the various reasons. One, it was industrial revolution. As we understand, the industrial revolution, or the revolution that repressed the human labor, the machine repressed the human labor. European discovered the machines, and those machines worked on behalf of human. This process of having machines produced the different demands, and those demands, they were answered in Africa. Example of the demands led them to come to Africa. It was looking for the market. At 1750 to 1850, all European nations, they discovered industry. And unfortunately, all of them, they are producing the same commodities. Example, if you are going Germany, there is cars. If you are going in Britain, there is car. When you go to Italy, there is cars. So who will buy where? So to find a new market, it was necessary to go or to come to Africa. The issue of area of dumping surplus population, unemployed one. After discovering machine, most of Europeans lost jobs. So where are we going to dump them? And as you understand, in country economy, the more you have high population that are not producing, then you are creating a big burden to control your economy. So you need to get them out of. So it was difficult to get rid of all of them by killing or by going dump there somewhere, like what happened there during Holocaust of Adolf Hitler with those Jews. So to solve that problem of population, they needed place to dump white surplus. So in that way, we can say those white, we saw them before independence. Some saw they were surplus population, says Rhodes There were unemployed people there in Europe, and they dumped in Africa. Industrial Revolution. Number 2, it was a European balance of power. European wanted to balance power, and this is happened once France lost 2 colonies in the Franco-Prussian War, the war that happened in 1870 to 1871. That was the war between France and Germany. When Germany unified and became strong nation, waged war over France and took important provinces from France that were Alsace and Lorraine. Because of that loss, France's power reduced. So to compensate that power, France rushed to Africa in order to get compensation of the lost provinces that were Alsace and Lorraine. Point number 3, it is national prestige. National prestige, that is happened when there were some of few nations, they were feeling weak before other nations. Example, we have Portugal and Belgium. Portugal and Belgium, they were termed as weak and poor nations. So to undergo or to take away that sense as we are weak before strong nations, they said it is necessary to have colonies in Africa. That's why Portugal rushed hard in Africa and Belgium rushed hard in Africa to increase the prestige for their nations. Number 4, it is European superiority complex. These people from the Europe, they term themselves as the super people, very clever people, blessed people, gifted people. So they wanted to show their superiority by colonizing Africa. 5, evangelical reason. This is through word of God. They colonized us by using word of God through missionaries, by saying missionary found us without Jesus Christ. We never knew if there is Jesus Christ. Then they said we are not civilized. We don't know those white fathers. They forgot that they found us with our religion. The problem was, what are we believing? All we are saying the name God, but which God are we believing? In Africa, we had our own religion, African traditional religion. But through evangelical reasons, they used the word of God. They said you're supposed to be colonized in order to get civilization. You're not civilized, you are barbaric, you don't know Jesus Christ. So they colonized us by using the justification of Bible and Jesus Christ, missionaries. And the last one is sociological factor. This sociological factor is connected to human nature. It is a human habit to dominate the weak one. It's human habit to dominate the weak one, and this is connected with the theory of evolution of man that proposed by Charles Darwin. The scientific theory of evolution of man, Charles Darwin said the strong survive for the fittest. Only strong will survive. Then they connect that like we are strong and you are weak, so we are here to control you. That is sociological factor. Every human feel better to monopolize, to control the weak one. That is nature of the world. So these were the reasons why Scramble for Africa, why Europeans wanted Africa. Then let's check the areas experienced the intensive scramble during that time. We have different areas in Africa that experienced the intensive scramble, like Nile River, Congo Basin, River Niger Basin, River Zambezi, South Africa, and East Africa. All these areas experienced the intensive scramble because of their potentiality. After that, let's check why some areas experienced intensive scramble. Why those areas mentioned before, like Congo, River Niger, South Africa, East Africa, Zambezi River, why they experienced the intensive scramble. These areas experienced intensive scramble because of the following. Number one, easy accessibility to the interior. You should understand at the beginning of colonization, the major means that helped them or enabled them to reach Africa, it was through waterway. In that way, they were advanced in marine technology. So once they arrived in Africa, they got to obstruction to reach the interior. So the areas that had the way to access them to the interior, those areas were scrambled much. And how it was easy to access to the interior, example using those rivers, it was easy to go interior of Africa. Princess of fertile land. Why those areas with the fertile land scrambled intensively? Only because of that problem caused by industrial revolution, looking for the raw material. Then it was necessary to have fertile land for the agriculture in order to plant cash crops and to have the production of raw material. The princess of minerals. All of us, we understand the value of mineral. Minerals were highly demanded in international markets and they are very valuable ornaments. So those areas that had the bank of minerals, they were scrambled very, very highly. Example, Congo, we are seeing the conflict of Congo up today, some sort connected to this availability of minerals. South Africa, they had large deposit of minerals, so it was scrambled much. Dense population. Why dense population? For men to get cheap labor for the production of agriculture their activities, and at the same time to get market. When there is high population, we are sure we can get market of our commodities. When there is dense population, we're sure that we can get laborers for the agriculture. Strategic factors. Strategic factor, these were the areas that have some of important resources like forest, like land, like maybe river or water bodies. So those areas that had they were strategic area, they scrambled much. Example, South Africa. These are the reasons, my students, why some areas experience the intensive scramble. The Berlin Conference. The Berlin Conference. Still we are in scramble and the partition of Africa. So before going to Berlin Conference, up now we're done on the issue of scramble. What the meaning of scramble? Nation scrambled Africa. Areas experienced intensive scramble. And the reason why intensive scramble. After this nation scrambled for Africa, they forecast like we are going to fight here in Africa because of these areas. Then one man from Germany called the Chancellor Edward Leopold Bismarck had the conference in Germany, the city called Berlin, and that city got the name of the conference, Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885. Berlin Conference attended by 14 nations, namely those nations I tried to show there. During the conference of 1814 to 1845, Africa was shared among 7 European countries. Those were Britain, France, Germany, Belgium, Spain, Portugal, and Italy. These were the nations got colonies in Africa, and Britain was a country got many colonies over all nations in Africa. That was Berlin Conference. This conference was mainly to divide Africa into peaceful means. And during this conference, we can say it was the time Africa was divided as a piece of cake on the table. And they were dividing Africa, and the bad thing it is they were dividing Africa without considering Africans. None of Africans were the part of this division. It was only European, and they divided our continent without sea for our presentation. So they divided Africa, and those 7 nations, they got colonies in Africa. That's the map showing the division of colonies in Africa, and that key, the representation on the map is showing the countries that are partitioned into different countries. And here we had those 7 European countries colonized Africa. Objective of Berlin Conference. Why Berlin Conference? Why Berlin Conference? Number 1, it was to lay the rules and guidelines of partitioning Africa. Why they were dividing Africa, they said we are supposed to have the rules and the principle that will guide us on dividing the continent. Settle and clear claims over different areas. There were some places they are claimed by different European nations. So to cool down or to settle down that and clear claims, they said you were supposed to have Berlin Conference. And in the last objective, it was identify potential areas like Congo, to know what were the places very, very potential, and identify those potential areas and dividing peaceful to Europeans. These were the main objectives of Berlin Conference, but mainly it is number 1, to make sure we are putting some of rules and principles that will help us to divide Africa in a peaceful means, to avoid the chance of having war. Then after conference, always we are the terms of agreement. What are we agreed? The same also in the Berlin Conference, they agreed on various terms. Term number 1 that they agreed in Berlin Conference, they said freedom of navigation. Freedom of navigation. Here in the freedom of navigation, they agreed that those areas that are braced with navigable river, that places should be remain free for any European nation to use that navigable areas. Example, it was Congo Basin. Congo River left free for European nations to navigate or to use that source of navigation. Number 2, they agreed that we are going to abolish slave trade, and they said that to abolish slave trade in order to get cheap labor, in order to get market, because once you are going to sell your product in the place where people are not paid, they are working as slaves, then how can you get those customers? So it was necessary to abolish slave trade in order to get market. One thing to note here, they didn't abolish slave trade because they loved us so much, or they loved their great parents so much. No, they abolished the slave trade in order to return back their money. You work, you paid, then you're going to buy their manufactured good, the money go back to them again. Another, they agreed the principle of notification. It was necessary, they say, that any area that taken by one European nation, that nation should notify another European nations that I'm holding this. Why it was necessary to notify other nations? To avoid the collision or scramble again of the same area. Another one, they agreed effective occupation. Once you got your colony, make sure you exploit deeply to the maximum level. And make sure you get anything that colony has. If it is minerals, make sure you exploit those minerals intensively. If it is land, make sure you occupy big land and you cultivate big land intensively. The same the water, and the same the human labor. If your colony had human labor enough, make sure you exploit those human labor intensively. Why? To maximize profit. and another it is peaceful dispute solving or settlement. They agree that they are going to solve all those dispute by peaceful means, by constitutional means. There is no room for European nations to fight for Africa, so no war among them. And the last one, it was no strong weapons to Africa. They agreed in Berlin Conference none of European nations should send strong weapons to Africa, and the main reason it was to avoid the occurrence of big war in Africa. As we know, we are getting confidence of going to the war once we have weapons. If we don't have weapons, we cannot go to the war. That way, sometimes I'm asking, if European nations are busy making nuclear weapons, where are they going to use those nuclear weapons? That were resolution of Berlin Conference. These were agreement they agreed in Berlin Conference. Results of Berlin Conference. What happened after Berlin Conference? They agreed and they started to implement their agreement. Among of the result of Berlin Conference was prevention of war among European nations. Berlin Conference succeeded to prevent war that might happen among European power on the scramble of Africa. That conference went in peaceful. Every European got what he wanted, and it went in smooth way. That way it avoided the collision. Although somehow there is weakness after starting implementing those agreement, there are some of incidents happened. Example, Fashoda incidents. France and Britain, they started fighting again of Africa. But somehow Berlin Conference prevented the war or the big war that might happen to European power because of Africa. Another effect, it was rise of chartered companies. After finishing dividing Africa, different chartered companies were established in Africa in order to increase the exploitation of African resources. This chartered company, or example, Royal Niger Company, Ibeaco, Giaco, by Calpita, all these companies, they were established in order to maximize or to increase the exploitation of Africa. Creation of modern African nations. It is because of Berlin Conference they draw a pencil line to divide the different European countries. And after Berlin Conference, we got modern names of Africa. We got the name Ghana, we got the name Tanganyika, we got the name South Africa, we got different names. Those new names were the product of Berlin Conference. This means that before Berlin Conference, those areas were not known like that. They are the African names, but after Berlin Conference, they named for their own identification to know where are they going. Number 4, it was formation of European culture. After Berlin Conference, they established colonial rule and they started to spread their European culture. They spread the language, they spread the religion. Up to date, we are very busy, and sometimes we are bloodline, but we are quarreling because of those regions brought by Europeans. We are Africans, but we are not seeing the Africanicity inside of us. There is this stereotyping, like believing the one who is good in speaking English, that's the one who's civilized, while English is not our culture. So they started spreading European culture, and that culture is affecting us even up today. Out of that also led to war from African reactions. After Berlin Conference, the establishment of colonial rule didn't go smoothly. It went with the reactions from Africans. When they started to implement, like, we are going to colonize Africa, Africans, some of them, they did not accept colonialism by opening two hands. some of them they reacted back to protect their political independence. And here we're talking about small scale resistance and large scale resistance. In small scale resistance, like those Abushiri and Bwanaheli, coastal of Tanganyika, Maji, that large scale resistance, Southern Party of Tanganyika, Shona and Ndebele, Nandi resistance in Kenya. Those were wars happened as the African reactions, like we don't want you to our place. In that way, we can prove that our great parents, they were civilized and they understood they want their political independence. But because Europeans, they are so powerful, as the definition of colonialism, when powerful nation control the weak nation. So Europeans, they were powerful, they defeated our great parents. But later on in 1960s, we started again. That was nationalism. We're going to check there in Form 4. And the last, it was separation of African societies. Berlin Conference led to the separation of African societies. Those societies were from one place. Because of Berlin Conference, you may find we have Maasai from Tanzania, or those days were from Tanganyika, and Maasai from Kenya. This Maasai, all of them, when you see their characters, they are speaking, they are dressing, their style, the same. It's showing that these people before, they were living in a place. But because of Berlin Conference, they were divided, and just only with the line, and that line is not visible even by using eyes. So they divided our people, they divided our friends, and they separated them too far. And because of that, now we don't see ourselves as relatives, we don't see ourselves as one Africa, because of those invisible lines are there just on a piece of paper. All these were the results or the effects caused by Berlin Conference. We are going on, dear students. Still we are in Scramble and Partition of Africa, and we done part A, partition, Scramble of Africa, and currently now we are in partitioning of Africa. We check the Berlin Conference, we check the Chancellor Otto von Bismarck, how we done, we check the objectives of Berlin Conference, and we finish the results of Berlin Conference. After Berlin Conference, then let's check side of West Africa. Here it is the partitioning of East Africa. East Africa handed over two European nations. It were German and Britain. Germany and Britain, they scrambled for East Africa. And after Berlin Conference, they sat down and signed different terms or agreement to make sure they are not colliding. And the partitioning of East Africa went by two agreements. British and German, they signed the two agreements, and those agreements went by the name the first Anglo-German Agreement of 1886 and the second Anglo-German Agreement of 1890, sometimes called the Heligoland Treaty. Let us start with the first Anglo-German Agreement of 1886, or the Elimination Treaty. This was the first treaty to divide East Africa, and it was the treaty that involved the three nations, three figures that were German, Britain, and Sultan of Zanzibar. Important thing in every agreement is terms. What shall we agree? Then they agreed the following. Sultan's sphere of influence will be Zanzibar, Pemba, Lamu, Kisimayo, Bravo, Mark, Mogadishu, and 10 miles coastal strip on the mainland. These were the first agreement on the side of Sultan, what Sultan will take. Remember, that is the first Anglo-German. After the side of Sultan, German sphere of influence were German East Africa, that included Tanganyika, Urundi, Rwanda, and the wheat of Kenya. Urundi and the Rwanda now can be called the Burundi and the Rwanda. While the British sphere of influence, it was Kenya. These were the first agreement of First Anglo-German Treaty, or sometimes called the Elimination Treaty. In this agreement, you can see we didn't see, or we are not seeing a part of Uganda, where Uganda was. So at the first agreement, Uganda was not divided anywhere, and because of this weakness, they said we need to go to the second argument, that is Anglo-German Treaty or Heligoland Treaty. And terms were like that: Uganda and Kenya recognized as area for influence of British, Zanzibar and Sultan area became under British protectorate, we to exchange with Heligoland Island in North Sea, which was under British. And this exchange is what gave us the name called Heligoland Treaty. And Germany bought those mili from the Sultan of Zanzibar. Dear students, that is how East Africa divided among two European nations that were Britain and German. By saying so, for today it is enough. See you in next class. Please, when you get any question, don't hesitate to share your comment there down. Remember to subscribe and to click the notification button to be the first to get new information that are uploaded. Thank you. Have a nice time.